I'm Ian Ginn, your host, and today we are at Connected Britain and delighted to have Amy Lowe, CEO of AbilityNet.org, with me, who was on the panel at the event titled Skills for a Digital Nation. On Digital Talk, we spotlight entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators using digital tech and telecoms to drive global impact in a changing world. Uncovering the unexpected, spotlighting hidden gems, and sharing inspiring stories that shine a light on the most transformative corners of our industry. Before we dive in, a quick announcement. Digitel Talk is proud to be an official media partner at this year's Connected Britain 2025. The place to be to find out the latest on fibre, 5G and digital infrastructure, which takes place on the 24th and 25th September in London. We'll be bringing you exclusive interviews and insights from the heart of the UK's connectivity revolution. Subscribe now so you don't miss out on this special coverage. Welcome to Digital Talk, Amy.
Thank you, Ian. It's lovely to be on the podcast.
Do you mind just introducing yourself and tell us a little more about your organisation?
Not at all. It'd be a pleasure. So I'm Amy Lowe, Chief Executive at AbilityNet. And for people who've not come across us before, we are a digital accessibility and digital inclusion charity. And our vision is a digital world accessible to all. So, of course, the telecoms industry is a very important part of that.
And how are you achieving that? What are the different mechanisms you have to propagate and try and create that world that you described?
Very good question, Ian. And it's although that's our vision, we've got a long way to go, actually. So we work towards our vision in three different ways. The first one is that we offer nationwide programs of support for disabled and older people to help them adapt technology to meet their needs and participate fully in the digital world. So that's a really important area. And I think a lot of people think that digital isn't for them. They think that it's something that they can't do. It's beyond their skills or their capabilities. But actually, there's so many innovative solutions that allow people to overcome barriers to access. But one of the most commonly heard phrases from the people that we support is, "I had no idea that tech could be adapted to meet my needs." So it's an incredibly rewarding and important program of work. We also have one of the largest specialist digital accessibility consultancy teams in Europe. Our teams they've got many years of experience of working with large and complex organisations to advise them on how to make sure their digital journeys are meeting the needs of the widest audience. So that might be doing technical evaluations to make sure that they are built to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but also undertaking user research with disabled users to really identify those real-world barriers that might be impeding people from being able to engage with technology. And we also offer an awful lot of training in those areas. And the third area is, we refer to it as convening the community. So, we bring together, we're very conscious of the fact that we can't solve this problem on our own. So it's really important that organisations come together to really focus on, opening up that digital world to everybody. So we run events, webinars, roundtables. We have a flagship event every year called TechShare Pro that brings together all the great and good of digital accessibility from around the globe. And beyond that, we obviously work with government, other charities to raise awareness about the challenges relating to digital inclusion and digital accessibility, and hopefully come up with solutions as well and ideas of how we can really make rapid progress.
Do you also provide, coming back to, I think, as you say, you mentioned three sort of lines or strands to the business. I, in my mind, I had this idea of assessment. Do you actually provide people either with, I don't know, some sort of guidance so they can self-assess, or do you also have, trainers or consultants that can actually look at individuals' needs or even organizational needs?
Absolutely. So we have an assessment service. So if somebody wants to be assessed for tools and adaptations that could be used to help them be either more productive at work, engage with education in a more equitable way, or also just from day-to-day life. So yeah, we have assessment options available. One of the things that we've sort of move towards when we're looking at organisations is trying to encourage them to create a working environment that's more accessible and inclusive by design. A lot of the tools and adaptations that were traditionally or originally designed to overcome disability barriers, we all use for productivity these days. So things like captions, everybody watches videos, and my daughter watches TV with captions, just to sort of make sure she can pick up everything that's going on, or if she's on a train or something like that. So we work with organisations to really evaluate employee journeys and think about where are the barriers that could exist and what are the tech adaptations that could help people to be more productive and comfortable. So, rather than making specialist individual adjustments, just making those tools and adaptations available to everybody is often a more effective and efficient way.
And do you train your own staff in that sense to become assessors and provide the training as well? Because in a way, there's also a digital gap there potentially as well, and on knowledge.
Yeah, I mean we have some in-house teams that support with assessments, but certainly our line managers are all quite clued up on what can be used to work in a more productive way.
And can you give me an example of a success story where you'd say you've been able to change someone's life or a group of people's lives? I mean, the more tangible it is, I think the more relevant it is to audience so they actually understand how this can be achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at one of our digital skills training sessions recently. We run a nationwide program of digital skills training for older and disabled people. And I met a really lovely lady there who she'd been recently widowed, and her husband looked after everything that had related to accessing digital. So she was really at a loss for how to kind of rebuild her independence, I suppose, and all of those kinds of important things whilst navigating life without her husband. So the digital skills series that we offer, it's funded by BT Group, this program. It's been fantastically impactful. This was the third session she'd attended, so she'd already been able to learn how to video call with her daughter who's in Australia. So that was a huge sort of lifeline for her to be able to connect with grandchildren and so on. She'd been able to learn how to access her banking online, been set up to reorder her prescriptions online. And I think, she said when she first came to it, she felt really, nervous, fearful, but actually having mastered a few practical tasks, she was now thinking, actually, could I be using digital to engage socially? So one of her friends from the local church said there was a regular quiz that they were running that she was going to join online on a Wednesday evening and so on. So, this real supported, patient training that the trainers that we have are really, really great at going at the pace and managing concerns as they go. But this lady had kind of engaged initially because she was really feeling lost, but now we're starting to get an awful lot out of digital. And actually, I said to her, she was saying, I get a bit scared. You know, sometimes I get these text messages. I'm not sure who it is and whether I should be replying. And I said to her, did you know that we've got a volunteer scheme, so people who can come to your house and help you out with tech challenges? And she said, oh, yes, no, Lucy, your trainer, was round at my house, you know, the other week, and I've got some of the neighbours in as well. So you can really see that this support, it's changing lives, but it's also, there's a lot of fear and concern about digital. And I think people, when they go to their families for support with this kind of thing, it's often done very quickly for them without you know, taking the time to give them confidence that they can, you know, they can do this by themselves. And so and can be a bit of a source of arguments.
No, I think, well, as that, as well as, of course, particularly if, let's say, I mean, look in my own family, some of us are, let's say, Mac, Apple orientated, some are Android orientated. So you have different children or different members of the family having different ideas of what would work. And of course, the person in the middle going, "What are you talking about?" You know, so. And no, I think, to be honest, that resonates very much with me. My mother-in-law is also at an age that she still gives it a go, and the same things you just mentioned, actually, the banking, emails, prescriptions are key enablers for her, and she's doing really well. She's in her 80s, and they're very much in line. How would people, is it this scheme that you mentioned, do people access it via BT? Do BT pick up these people in need, or is it through your website, or how would people actually go about that scheme, getting people involved?
So typically we're engaging with groups locally to invite people to the events. We market some of it, and BT also, but yeah, I can provide you with some information on how that works. But the volunteer scheme, we have a free phone number that people can call to arrange for a volunteer. So they could call that to find out about training courses that are being run in their area.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
If we move on to, of course, the opportunity for us to meet was driven by the fact that, by the way, you had a stand. I did go by your stand. I noticed that as well. But Connected Britain. So what was your takeaway from the event? How do you think it went? And yeah, any thoughts on that?
So I think what was exciting for me this year was there really was a high emphasis on digital inclusion. And it feels to me like digital inclusion is having its moment where the penny's finally dropped, I guess, that if we don't address the digital divide and digitization continues at the speed it is today, we're going to fail to get the true benefits of the digitization, particularly public services, but generally in the corporate sector as well. So it was heartening to see so many talks and discussions around that topic. I came along to speak on the digital skills panel, as you mentioned earlier. And I think the angle I wanted to bring to that discussion was actually, you know, we've got challenges with foundational digital skills gaps within the UK, but a skills gap that I think is less visible and highly problematic is the lack of understanding in digital design and development teams of how to design digital journeys that cater to the widest audience. And, you know, when online options were an option rather than the only option, it was frustrating for people with accessibility needs to not be able to access digital journeys. Of course it was. It's the digital equivalent of having the door slammed in your face, really, isn't it? So very frustrating. But there were offline options available that they could access, whereas as time goes on, those options are being more and more hidden or inconvenient. And actually, I think the skills level within the digital development world is not improving. So that was really one of the important points I wanted to land.
Well, good. That's you've been able to share it with the audience today, and yeah, it's certainly food for thought. What other, and outside of your day job, is there other topic that you would say is a real pressing issue that we in the world should be addressing?
Oh, well, we couldn't get through a conversation without bringing up AI, could we?
You said it.
Sorry.
How does that fit in then? How what's your view on that one?
I just think we're at a real crossroads at the moment. And again, I guess I have concerns around ethics and governance. I have specific concerns about representation of disabled people, for example, within AI. You know, some of the way that the language models work is often to bring back the most obvious or predictable answer. That can lead to some pretty vanilla, average type outcomes. So I worry about some of the tools that are being employed, like in call centres, for instance, where you've got AI doing sentiment analysis and drawing inferences about how a caller might be feeling based on their language patterns, whether they're pausing, whether they're talking in a flat voice or whatever that may be. And although there may be patterns of behaviour that indicate things for somebody with speech differences, for instance, or maybe they have processing issues, so it takes them a while to sort of digest what's being said. I just feel that the models need to be trained with the right data. Otherwise, people are going to be having judgments made about them that perhaps are not accurate.
No, I think you can extend that into in employment, can't you? And other areas where selection or people being prioritized.
There's some very worrying trends in recruitment where, there will be things like eye contact and so on being, a lot of recruitment, they'll have people do a short video as part of the selection process now. And, there's ever such a lot to unpack in there. However, of course, on the flip side, AI has huge advantages for disabled people, and some of the tech that's available now, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined, like the...
You did say that you're, let's say, also looking at it sort of more, not holistically and not just from a UK perspective. We were also media partners at the AI for Good Summit in Geneva this summer with the UN. So I do recommend you, maybe participating in that, because without people participating and their voices being heard, these things just might not be considered. But it certainly is a good melting pot. And certainly I think someone like yourself would be perfectly ideal to be there, actually, and maybe talk about some of these topics, because that's the way these things are being highlighted in a way, that sort of forum. Given the time, I'm going to ask you two more questions, if you don't mind. One is about, which actually came from the AI for Good Summit, which they made the comment that we now have Generation Alpha. who are basically born into the AI world. Of course, AI has existed actually 30, 40 years or even longer, but it's now, I guess, in the hands of everyone. It's been democratized and made available, being pushed by some of the big corporates in the world as well, that, it's immediately available on your PC and wherever it might be. And you do feel a bit left behind if you don't know how to use these things. But any advice to a youngster who says they want a brave youngster who wants to become an entrepreneur and involved with AI for good? Have you got any suggestions how they should approach it?
So I think AI for good has got so much opportunity. So I would say approach it with creativity, with the best of intentions, and also involving input from a diverse range of people. I think it's whenever you're developing anything innovative or doing anything entrepreneurial, don't do it in a vacuum, engage, do your research and research with the edge cases, because that will typically give you a fantastic product that everybody can use. But I guess another piece of advice for Generation Alpha would be learn the art of critical thinking in an AI first world, because that feels to me like one of the, people say, what digital skills do you need? And I think critical thinking is absolutely key, because the information comes so quickly now. It's more difficult to delve into where it's come from, or do people even take the time? So just having that questioning within your toolkit as you develop and innovate is quite key.
Great advice. We also, as the podcast, like to do good ourselves. So we want to give the opportunity to give a shout out to a colleague or a project initiative that, you want to celebrate, really. Have you got someone in mind or organization in mind?
It's very, very difficult to narrow in on one person. I mean, I am so fortunate to be surrounded by incredible people doing incredible things every day. So if it's okay with you and it's not a cop-out, I'd like to give a shout out to the entire AbilityNet team, including our 500 nationwide volunteers and our customers, supporters and partners, because without that whole infrastructure, we wouldn't be able to support and make a difference to the lives of, many thousands of people every year. But yeah, as I shout out to them and say, brilliant work, I'd also like to say, let's keep going, because although we're making a massive impact every day, there's a lot more for us to do before we achieve our vision. So let's all keep going.
Fantastic. And you as a leader, I'm sure they appreciate the contribution leadership they're able to bring as well. So great shout out at that. But Amy, it's been a great pleasure to have you on our podcast. And you're now part of the Digital Talk family. So thanks again for being our guest.
Oh, it's been really lovely talking to you, Ian, and I am going to be spinning through the back catalogue, because it sounds like I'm going to find lots of like-minded people on the podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate us and subscribe, and feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. And if you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please send us an email. Thanks for being part of the Digital Talk community and for listening. Stay tuned.